Well, if we had that sort of attitude, then economic progress would be impossible. Economic progress actually depends on inequality. Inequality is important.
What is the state of the world at the moment? Is it progressing or is it going backwards? Well, Marian Tupy, who's the editor of humanprogress.org, believes that we've never had it so good. Marian is the author of 10 global trends that every smart person should know, and he joined the Center for Risk Analysis for a long conversation about the book. What follows is an extract from this conversation. Enjoy. Marian, welcome to the CRA channel. It'll be great if we could go through some of the themes of the book. Let's start first with income levels. What do you think is driving this increase in income? What are the misconceptions around poverty and wealth in our global society?
Thank you very much for having me. Delighted to be with you. Well, the first thing to understand, I think, is that for most of human history, income per capita was around $2 per person per day. The reason why we are talking about absolute poverty and we measure it in $2 per person per day is because that is the subsistence level. If you are making or earning less than $2 per person per day, you're probably starving. And so $2 per person per day is the cutoff. That's the absolute level of poverty. And that's where human beings have been for thousands of years, really, as far back as we can tell, as far as back as we can estimate. And then something extraordinary happens in the late 1700s, early 1800s, with the arrival of the Industrial Revolution and what Deirdre McCloskey calls the Great Enrichment, where income per capita per person per day begins to increase. Today, globally, the average is $40 per person per day. It is about $160 in the United States. And if the current trends continue, then by 2100, the global average will be roughly where the American income per person per day is today. So the last 200 years are a fundamental break with history. It signifies the arrival of the modern era, the break with our agricultural past. And what happens is, of course, that there is the Industrial Revolution that takes place in Western Europe, then North America, and then around other parts of the world as well. So people leave farms, they leave the agricultural lifestyle where they were poor, and they move into the cities, into factories, and they become more productive, essentially. So if you think about the United States, for example, as far back as late as 1900, 40% of people worked in agriculture. Today, fewer than 2% of the people work in agriculture. And that doesn't mean that the 38% became unemployed. They just moved to manufacture and to services industry where they are more productive, where they can produce more wealth. And this has happened in many other countries around the world and continues to happen. So that's the key really to the global enrichment. And the key to the Industrial Revolution is that Western European institutions became increasingly over time more politically and economically liberal, open, inclusive, however you want to put it. And people were free to innovate and to work in new ways. They were able to come up with new ideas, benefit from those new ideas. And we have experienced a lot of technological progress, which makes us more productive. And greater productivity is obviously mirrored in greater incomes.
Enjoying our content? Click here to subscribe to the CRA channel for more insightful commentary every weekday morning.
Going along with that is, of course, the massive decrease in absolute poverty. As I mentioned, it's about $2 per person per day. In 1800, 90% of people around the world lived on that level in absolute poverty. By 1980, that had dropped to about 40%. And between the start of the new millennium and 2020, that dropped to less than 10%. So in the last 20 years, we have seen the most dramatic decline in absolute poverty ever registered in the world. And that decline is accelerating, or had been accelerating until COVID. COVID is going to set us back. There is no way of getting around that. Absolute poverty is going to increase. Many other trends, including life expectancy, are going to become worse. And hopefully that's just a temporary blip, but COVID has obviously stopped many of these trends from continuing. We are going to see a bit of a retraction. But then, if the world continues to be, broadly speaking, at peace, if the world economy continues to be, broadly speaking, globalized, and people are free to participate in economic activity, then hopefully we can make up for the lost time.
So, Marian, many commentators in public discourse at the moment will point to your argument and say, well, yes, poverty has declined, but inequality has mushroomed. And inequality is seen as a great threat to social stability and economic sustainability. What do you make of those arguments? Do you think that that is true, first of all? And is it as much of a risk as these commentators make it out to be?
Global inequality has declined. It has not increased. It has declined. And it has declined because China, India, and many other countries have become much, much richer than what they were. In China's case, they had communism, they had Maoism, they were dirt poor. People literally ate mud in order not to starve. People in India under the Pyramid Raj were very poor. The economy of India stagnated until in 1992 they had a fundamental economic reform. And India and China primarily, but other countries as well, Chile, South Korea, Taiwan, and so forth, started to grow very fast in the second half of the 20th century. So the massive gap that had opened up between the early industrializers, Western Europe and North America, and the rest of the world started to shrink because India, China, and other countries have increased. So globally, inequality has declined. Inequality is increasing within countries. Now, inequality is increasing for different reasons. Fundamentally, in countries like China and India, they are increasing because when you take your foot off the neck of ordinary people and you allow them to flourish, to participate in a free economy and to make profits and to provide services to their fellow human beings, those people who have better ideas and who are more hardworking are going to get ahead of others. So the artificial equality which communist regimes and socialist regimes impose from top down then disappear, and the most enterprising individuals are going to make more money, and therefore inequality increases. Now, inequality increases at different places at different pace. In some places it's not increasing, in other places it is increasing, but at different paces. And there are particular reasons in different countries why inequality is increasing, when it is increasing. And you have to look at those individually. You cannot make a sort of global comment about inequality. But so long as inequality is increasing due to people working harder or alternatively having better ideas, that's not a problem. I do not begrudge Jeff Bezos his $160 billion because he has created a company which is providing a tremendous service that I enjoy and participate in almost on a daily basis. I do not begrudge Steve Jobs that the fact that when he died, he was $7 billion rich, which increased inequality in the United States because he's created a product which, again, I use on hourly basis. So everything depends on why inequality increases. If you have a country where inequality increases because the ruling class, let's say the communist regime in North Korea, extracts wealth from slave labor, that is the wrong kind of inequality. But inequality is essentially a midwife of economic progress. Think about it this way. Let's say that we are all living in caves and somebody decides, well, I don't like this very much. I would rather build a house on a hill. And the rest of us would say, well, that's crazy. That's going to increase our inequality in standard of living. Well, if we had that sort of attitude, then economic progress would be impossible. Economic progress actually depends on inequality. Inequality is important because when somebody produces a better product or somebody produces a better production technology or new innovation, then the fact that as a result of that inequality, he or she become better off is also a signal to the rest of us that we should follow them in embracing better production processes or just a better standard, a better way of living that will produce those results. So Inequality in itself is a very difficult subject. It really differs across the world, and most importantly, the reasons for it differ. Inequality as such is not a problem so long as it is a result of productivity differences between people rather than extraction of resources from one group to another.
Thanks very much for watching this discussion with Marian Tupy of humanprogress.org. If you enjoyed this analysis, you might want to check out Marian's book. Please also leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think that the world is progressing or going backwards? If you enjoyed this conversation, you might like to watch some of the other videos in the series, which will be published on the channel in the coming days. My name is David Ansara. This is the Center for Risk Analysis. Until next time, take care.